This is my second video in the series Oregon's DHS CPS Child Trafficking Mafia. There's a lot to discuss today. There's a lot of stories to think about. There's a lot of other people's cases that I know of to think about. Endless numbers. A statistic that I'd like to mention is that in Oregon right now, in 2023, there's about 8,000 children in foster care. Statistically, according to the DHS website, foster children stay in foster care for about 570 days. So every 570 days, DHS has to take another 8,000 children to continue their empire of corruption and to grow their empire of corruption for what I would call a large number of otherwise unemployable women. And all the people who have their hands in the trough in what in Oregon is about $1 billion industry every year with Title IV Social Security funds under ASFA for the Adoption and Safe Families Act by wonderful Hillary Clinton. Now, I'd like to talk about the fact that my wife is from Southeast Asia. We have 6 children together. The oldest is 22, the youngest is 6 years old. And we have a farm. And we have access to 2 homes, one on the farm and one around the corner. It's a multi-bedroom house there, plenty of room for the kids. My wife does not use drugs or alcohol. Never has. Our kids are successful. They have been in foster care for more than 5 years now. And 4 of them have aged out or gone home. And the 2 youngest, 8-year-old and 6-year-old, are still in foster care, starting their 6 years with a foster family that believes exceedingly that they are doing God's work. They go to church, and the foster mom is absolutely clueless that some 15 minutes away from her, the children's mother cries herself to sleep every night. Not an issue, not a problem. Goody goody two-shoes. And we have seen in the county endless discrimination against our kids because they're half Asian. We've seen it in places of business, and we've certainly seen it with DHS. It's the only thing that can explain why the children haven't gone home in their entirety. And families with very significant homelessness or drug problems have gotten their children back long time ago. Next to our farm, there are children of a drug family. Those children are unattended. They play in the street. They cry. They're neglected. DHS is very well aware of them, but they are home. And our kids are educated. They're very smart. We homeschooled them part-time. DHS in court tried to say that we didn't let them go to school, which was a lie. Aubrey Havicost was our first caseworker. She was a proficient liar. I think she probably would win in a lying tournament with Satan himself. She was so good at it. Lied to the judge all the time. Didn't matter. Judge doesn't have problems with people lying in his court, especially when they're in his pocket and they're working in tandem with DHS. CASA, they all work together, you know. never have anything good to say about the family. What do you think you're doing bringing a non-white wife to this county? That seems to be the message. So there's a lot of different incidents with the lies and the twisting and the distortion that DHS does. And the judge rules that over and over that DHS failed to make reasonable effort, but there's never any sanction on DHS for doing that. Now, here lately in December, the judge ruled that, there's going to be a change of plan. All 4 kids have gone home, but we are going to adopt out and terminate parental rights on the 8-year-old and the 6-year-old. And make out that those children don't know who their parents are and think that that's going to fly. So it seems that the lawyers, everybody, they get paid. Doesn't matter whether they win or lose, they get paid. Why should they offend the court by standing up to the court? They get paid. Why should they make motions when the court's in error? They get paid. Why should they send your witnesses away without informing you? They get paid. Why should they put a woman on the stand without her consent, without her informed consent, without telling her what's going on when she doesn't speak English? She's from another country. She's a citizen of another country. And they're trying to take her children away. And the children are dual citizens. And they're trying to take the children away. So my wife's lawyer, without explaining it to her that he was going to put her on the stand, or what it meant, or what the hazards were, put her on the stand. And then everybody tried to twist what she said. And then the judge took part of what she said out of context and said, well, that's going to determine the case. That was through a translator, an inaccurate translator, 2 translators, both of whom are inaccurate in the language that my wife speaks, which is Aka from Southeast Asia, that they fly in from the East Coast and from Tokyo to have them translate at great expense to the state. And then the court takes advantage of the fact that they don't translate correctly and then use that improper translation against my wife, against both of us, the whole case. Okay? So I'm not supposed to visit the kids except at the DHS office. In over 5 years, DHS does not have one case where I have attempted to contact or contacted the kids, except at the DHS building on the scheduled times. And so we have no criminal charges against us. The judge now knew that there were photos that showed that the woman from Liberty House was lying. The DOJ attorney, with every question that was asked of that doctor, said objection. And the judge said sustained. About 5 or 6 times this went on, till my attorney turned and said, the judge isn't going to let me question this witness. Now, this particular judge, there are a lot of attorneys who will not handle a case in his court. I won't quote what they say about him, but they won't handle a case in his court. Not interested. Because of the way he treats them. So, the other thing is that there's a constitutional right to client-attorney confidentiality. that the client has the right to talk to their attorney in complete privacy. Well, the translator that translates for my wife in her language for her attorney is actually hired by DHS and translates for them. So everything that my wife discusses goes right back to DHS. Everything she discusses with her attorney. Okay? So that calls into question the entire case, because in 5 years plus, my wife has never had confidentiality with her attorneys. So they get inadequate translators. They have the DHS translator working as a translator for my wife, both in the courtroom when she wants to talk to her attorney, and if she's by video and my wife has a question for her attorney, she's not there to translate. So my wife has no chance to talk to her attorney during the proceedings. And this hasn't been brought up in the court by any of the attorneys as a problem. It's no big deal. She doesn't need attorney-client privilege. So now there's 2 kids visit the home when they have visitation, my wife's home, and the caseworkers have this same translator on the phone, even though neither one of the little kids speak their native language. Now, this goes back to Aubrey Havocost, who was the first case worker. She is the one who said the kids can learn their language when they get older. So the language that the 2 little ones knew when they were taken away in the middle of the night from their mother, screaming, and were put in a home that did not speak their language and separated from their 4 older siblings without justification, their civil rights were violated. And we know from experience and looking at lots of cases that DHS, CPS, whatever it may be called in your state, they always want to separate out the youngest, most adoptable kids to set up the situation where they can do adoption if they can get half a chance. Now, the attorneys that were involved, not my attorney, not my wife's attorney, they were jumping up and down for TPR like that was going to the carnival. They thought that was great on the very first day of the jurisdictional trial. Now, a lot of things went on in that courtroom. I won't go into them all because I'm trying to keep this a focused video about some recent events in the last day, today, in the last couple of months. But I'd like to say something about attorneys, and they get paid whether they do their job or not. They get paid whether they represent their client well or not. They don't stand up against DHS. There's one attorney in Oregon that he will take a case against DHS if the child is severely injured or dead. He's not interested in taking a case where DHS just absolutely trashed the family. There's no money in that, okay? And so I have women and men, parents, asking me all the time and asking on the forums, where do you get a lawyer in Oregon that will take on DHS for what they're doing? And I'll tell them, the likelihood is very little. And if you get a court-appointed attorney and they're not asleep at the wheel, you're lucky. If they move your case forward for you in some little way, you're lucky. They don't communicate well. They really quite often don't have much of a strategy. and basically they just roll over for the judge. Judge does what he wants. He knows that. It's like, listen, buddy, if you're going to stand up to me in this courtroom, you're going to have problems in your next case, okay? So the whole system's corrupt. CASA comes into the court and lies. CASA tries to keep your kids from going home, discourages them, tells them, oh, we could get you this and housing and employment and further education. You'll lose all that if you go home. These are dogs, man, really dogs. So I don't have much good to say about the attorneys. I don't care if you're paying for them or not. They're limp. And they, you know, I think this one attorney I had was actually better than some of the others. But we still get beat up in court, and it just goes on and on. And the judge answers to nobody. In one case, we had an appeal. It was a really good appeal at one point in the case. And the attorney submitted it, just like he had submitted another appeal electronically. And the Oregon Court of Appeals said, no, you have to notify us that you're going to submit it electronically. Otherwise, it has to be in paper form. And you have to notify us by paper that's going to be in electronic form. Therefore, we're kicking out your appeal. We're not going to hear it. Because they know that we had the court dead to rights. They know. They read the case. They saw it. Said, we can't win this. This is really bad. So we'll let it go. So then you have inadequate counsel. Now, there were photos in our case that proved the witness was lying. And Matt Jarvis in Polk County, he failed to compel Liberty House to deliver the photos. So those photos weren't involved in the jurisdictional hearing. Had they been involved in the jurisdictional hearing, it would have shown that the witness was lying. It would have shown that Liberty House was lying. Okay? So everybody lies. They all get to lie. It's liar's court. So in the last 5 years, the caseworkers, there's been a number of them, have done everything they can when they do visits to the house to antagonize my wife because her English isn't good. There may be or may not be a translator. And they nitpick on her nonstop, how she's feeding the kids, whether the TV's on or not, whether the kids looks at the phone or not, all this stuff. Well, it turns out that the foster family allows them nonstop use of iPads, which we protested against. We said, look, if they're at our house, we want like 30 minutes a day. That's it. So my little boy says to me, you mean like 30 minutes we can use the iPad, then we have 30 minutes we don't have to use the iPad, then we can use it again in 30 minutes? I said, no. My rules are you get it 30 minutes a day and then you go outside and play and do other things, okay? So they would antagonize my wife nonstop. They still do, okay? They're looking, nitpicking, trying to find fault all the time. Now, like I said, my wife doesn't use drugs. She puts on a fabulous feed, and I can guarantee you that at visitation at the DHS offices for years, nobody put on a feed for their kids like we do. They can't eat it all. Fruit, vegetables, ham, chicken, pizza, always changing crab. Thursdays are crab Thursdays, shrimp, you name it. We don't have soda pop. We don't have junk food. It's all good, solid food. Sometimes my wife brings in a whole meal cooked up Aka style from the farm, okay? Which reminds me, in over 5.5 years, Jackie Nix and the other supervisors and managers at Dallas DHS, Aubrey Havacost, Sarah Scott, they have never allowed and arranged for both of these minor children, and before it was 3 children, 4 children, 5 children, 6 children, they have never arranged successfully for my wife to take those children 3 blocks down the street in Dallas, Oregon, to a Thai restaurant. She's from Thailand. They've never allowed her to do that. We said, hire the National Guard, hire Brinks, hire 50 off-duty police officers. You don't think you can cope with taking some kids down the street to a Thai restaurant? She's a Thai citizen. They speak a language native to Thailand. Okay? So that goes back to the language thing. So Aubrey Havocost intentionally separated the two youngest out away from their siblings, which extremely traumatized them. They had no contact with anybody that spoke their language and didn't give a shit. And she even admitted when the foster mom said that the little girl screams in the night, and this was 3 years on, and will not be consoled. I quote her, and will not be consoled. Aubrey Havocost blurted out in an unguarded moment, it's the trauma from being in foster care. Okay? Well, let that ride on her conscience. So they haven't been able to cope with the bowl of soup, allowing my wife to take these little kids down to a Thai restaurant and have a bowl of soup. So now one time it was scheduled. On Monday at the visit, they scheduled tomorrow, we're going to go for a bowl of soup. And lo and behold, in the morning, they said, well, the little girl decided she didn't want to go. She was all excited last night, but now she doesn't want to go and have a bowl of soup. Okay, well, I wonder how that happened, huh? Wonder who had been talking to her, putting bugs in her brain all night long. Okay? So I think she's been allowed to take them to Walmart once or twice, going on 6 years, right down the street from DHS building. Can't go down the street the other direction 3 blocks to the Thai restaurant and get a bowl of soup. These people really are pathetic. If they understood how pathetic they are, okay? Really small human beings. When antagonizing a mother and using children as pawns is what your life, that's the height of your life. And you're otherwise unemployable because there's not very many jobs out there where the chief job qualification is that you're a really cruel person. I mean, concentration camps, prison guards, jailers, it's not like every day. You can't get that job in a safe way. Not even a box boy can get a job if they're cruel, like shove the cart into a lady's car or make her fall down or, drop her groceries. I mean, no, they're not gonna get a job like that. All right. Skills. What skills does a caseworker have? She just has that thing that tells what her salary is. You look it up online, and she's just figuring out what she has to do to make it bigger. So she has to make sure that DHS has no reason to give up kids. So she has to just antagonize and keep back from getting them kids. And if you tell DHS, we don't agree with what you're doing, they're just going to keep your kids longer. It doesn't matter. We're going to tell them we don't agree with what you're doing. We're not going to kiss nobody's ass, okay? We know what y'all did and how it all works. The lawyers, the caseworkers, the counselors, the dentists, the doctors, the foster parents, all this stuff. Okay, the foster parents, they're at the bottom. They get a little bit of money. But then you have like the respite parents and the counselors and the dentists. And then we had exemptions on all our kids. They forced vaccines on them anyway, against our will. We had Oregon certified exemptions for all of our kids, vaccine exemptions. And they forced vaccines on the kids anyway. That was the judge's doing. He said, oh, your opinion about vaccines isn't religious. It's just scientific, so I'm going to force them on your kids anyway. Okay, that's on you, Judge. So, yeah, it's a lot of years. It's heartbreaking for my wife. It's heartbreaking for the extended family. It just goes on. The kids that got out of foster care, they're successful. It causes them headaches in what they're still doing to their younger brother and sister. And they all know exactly what they think about DHS. So yeah, it was Attorney Habacost who put my wife on the stand without consent. I had a bunch of witnesses in the courtroom, in the lobby. Matt Jarvis sent them all home. I said, hey, where are all the witnesses in the lobby? He says, oh, I sent them home without consent. So anyway, we got some toys for the kids at the farm. And Sarah Scott, the current caseworker, she said, oh, no, they're dangerous. They can't use those toys. And the kids said, well, we use these all the time at the foster home. And so Sarah Scott asked me, well, can you get me the safety manual on these and show that they are safe? And I did that, got them for her. Didn't happen. Okay. So this is really disturbing when you think about this, okay? When I was a kid, I had a Lionel train set. Really cool, electric, runs around the track, you know. The cat even liked it, liked to chase the locomotive, you know. We had a lot of fun, the cat and the train. So I thought, you know, big living room floor at their mom's place. I thought, hey, they'd love that, you know, because they were doing this like all day long on iPads at the foster home, and I was like, that's bullshit. And so I got, and they want to play video games when they got to their mom's place, and I says, that's not good. So she was having this thing about, I try to keep them off the TV, off the video games, but they're coming there all expectant and trained that they're just going to get full access to screen time. So it's really difficult, you know. She has to hide the remote, all this different stuff. So first we got karaoke speaker thing that the little girl and the little boy could sing into. And that was last week. They really enjoyed that. So that was something for non-screen time, okay? Now, like I say, you got to remember that my wife puts on this huge feed, cleans the house, puts on this huge feed, or if she's at the farm, she's taking them out, the greenhouses, picking vegetables or showing them what's going on, or, you know, that sort of thing. But it's cold right now, so it's mostly indoors. So she puts on big feeds, you know, fruit, vegetables, always has. And she's like, take videos of them, you know, and stuff like that. And they try to say, well, you can't take videos of your kids, you know. It's like, oh, piss off. So the transport woman will sit there nonstop taking notes, you know, like she's an inspector, you know, like she's interrogating a witness, you know, like that, you know. It's really obnoxious, you know. I wonder if they do that to the foster parents, like they're there 24/7, all the way up their ass, taking notes nonstop on how they do things, like all the screen time. So I got online and I found out where I could get a little electric train like I had when I was a kid. Actually vintage, you know, you can buy them now for not much money online. And I found one. The guy was in Tigard, Oregon. And I said, hey, I'll come pay you for it tonight. He says, well, I'm at work and I work really late tonight, so I could meet you like Saturday morning. So I have my 3:30 to 4:30, 1 hour visitation for 5 years, more than 5 years, 1 hour a week visitation with my boy. Now I've requested more time because they said, you know, hey, you know, there's these difficulties with him. I said, well, he needs more time with his dad. Spend more time with him, okay? Sarah Scott, nah, blew it off. No big deal. What's a father? What do you need a father for? We got a foster dad. They're going to adopt your kids anyway, so screw you. Okay? So, I didn't get more time, but I got an hour on Thursday, running 5-6 years here now. And so I told my son, he's 8, I said, I'm getting you an electric train. You're going to love it, I think. He was all excited. And I said, I tried to get it for today so you could take it with you to go see your mom at the farm. But the guy's working late, so he can't meet me to give me the train last night. So I couldn't bring it today. And it won't be till Saturday till I can get it. Okay? So I said, Monday, on your visit with your mom, it'll be all set up, ready to go. All you got to do is turn it on. Okay? It's going to be really cool. It's not some cheap, junky train that they might make now. I don't know who does. But I said, this is like an old train like I had when I was a kid. They're really durable. They're really well made, the whole thing. And they're a lot of fun. And so he goes, that's really cool. I just keep my promises to my kids. Okay? So I got the train, got it all set up. Of course, now they're listening in DHS. These perverts in DHS, these sadistic people, they're listening. Their brains are turning. How can we screw with this family? Just like, the bowl of soup. Oh, the little girl doesn't want to show up. After 5 years, she gets an appointment to go to have bowl of soup with her mom, and she doesn't want to show up. You know how it is, So, and the idea was that we don't want her building an affectionate, rewarding relationship with her mother. Because our plan has always been to adopt her out. She's highly sellable, so's the little boy. Okay? This family wants these kids, damn it, and we're not giving them back. Okay? So I had the train all set up at the house. Big track, and got it cheap. And the guy had it for 40, 50 years, and he put it in his mom and dad's attic, and it sat there for 30 years, and he just got it out. Original box. Sold it to me. So I set it all up and tested it, all worked, and so I give it to my other son. I said, set this all up in your living room for him so that all he has to do is come in and his eyes bug out and he can play with this train. It's really cool. Heck, it's really cool to me now when I look at it still. So Sunday night, it's all set up. Their visit is at 3:30 on Monday morning. So now the deal is that since my wife doesn't speak English a lot, if she has a communication to make with my wife, she's supposed to contact the attorney or the attorney's assistant who goes to the home and sits there to make sure that the DHS workers don't beat my wife up and lie about what happened at the visit or antagonize her and get a confrontation going. So she's there to tell them, back off. Okay? She's been doing that for months now. Worked out pretty well. So they call my wife with the translator about 10 o'clock in the morning. Say they want to talk to my wife. And my wife says, you need to talk to my attorney. Call my attorney. Because she doesn't want to have singular conversations with the caseworker. Because she knows these bitches lie. That's all they do. They lie, they twist, they distort, they manipulate. They're just psychopaths, okay? So Sarah Scott calls, and my wife says she's not going to talk to her. She has to talk to her attorney. And her attorney has to be on the line or she can tell the message to the attorney. So she hangs up. And so then she can't get any response from her attorney. And so, by 10:15 or so, the caseworker, Sarah Scott, calls back and my wife's saying, no, you got to talk to my attorney. And so she just says what she's going to say. She says there's no visit today except at the building. Well, we had this a long time ago that the visits for my wife are going to be at the farm or the house next door at the farm, or she's not coming back to the building. And they would do this forever. They would keep taking her visits at the farm away at her home. They keep taking them away from her. Oh, that's a little infraction. We're taking your kids away from the farm visit. Has to be at the DHS building. So finally my wife said, look, at the farm or at my home next door, or there's no visit. I'm not coming there. I am not kissing your ass and coming to that building while you abuse me. And I supported her in that. I says, I understand where you're coming from. I do my visits at the building, but I understand this is about the kids going home and that that's the way you want it. And it is unfair. It's unethical for them to do what they do. It's cruel to the children. It's telling them you're not going to the farm anymore. So when my daughter didn't show up at the soup kitchen, we canceled at 12 o'clock. I think meet you and her lawyer called DHS and said, no soup. If the little girl's not coming, we're not doing it. So Sarah Scott, they went and they picked up the little boy only, and they took him to the Thai restaurant. And when his mother didn't show up, he asked, why didn't my mother show up? And they said, she's confused. And I know they said that because he repeated it to me the next Thursday. She isn't confused. These lying bitches are confused, okay? So Sarah Scott says, the kids aren't going to be able to visit at the house anymore, the farm anymore. It's all going to be at the building, okay? Now, they had a standing order from the judge that they were supposed to allow overnight visits to my wife with the two little ones a year and a half ago. The judge called them out on it. It didn't matter. They didn't do it. And there was no penalty. It's just the way it is. Okay? We're not surprised. So they've never had to correct anything that they were told to do that they didn't do. So they know that there's this train set up for that little boy. And I told him it was going to be there and he was going to see it Monday. And they heard that. And so Sarah Scott said, well, because of concerns that we have, there's not going to be any more visits at the farm or the house. It's all going to be at the DHS building. And I wrote her and I said, what are the concerns? Okay. And I told her, I said, you know, you have to be, that little boy was promised that train on Monday afternoon. And you have to be one sadistic bitch, boy-hating bitch, Sarah, to make sure that that didn't happen. Okay? So you already voted to terminate parental rights. The judge already did that. So now I can say anything I want. Because what do I have left to lose? Aubrey Havocost, lying bitch. Sarah, sadistic bitch. What do I have to lose? Okay? I don't know you people anything. You're vicious mongrels. Okay? And I'm on all these lists in Oregon, and I hear nonstop what you people do to mothers especially. So you're women, supposedly. You're feminists, supposedly. And who are you the most satanically cruel to? Women. Explain that. That you get your rocks off ripping the hearts and souls out of mothers over their babies. Explain that to me. I mean, do you like read Dante's Inferno? I mean, there's certain places in hell. Read it. You know? It's like, where do you get that? Are you childless? You're viciously jealous of a woman with children? You go home at night ripping the soul out of women? I mean, I've even seen posts of caseworkers in Oregon where they say, I can destroy you. I'll take your kids. You know, if you get pregnant, I'm taking that baby. So, you know, a lot of these foster moms, like my children's foster mom, they're church women, goody, two-shoe, doing God's work, church women, bullshit. They are the bitches for DHS. And you know why I say bitches? Is because they're stupid. Because they're always pro-life, right? Doing God's work. But DHS is the biggest pro-abortion advocate there is on the planet. So when caseworkers say, if you get pregnant, I'm taking that baby, you know what the women do? And they've told me. They get abortions. And so you bitches at the churches that want to be goody-goody two-shoe by being foster moms sickos, listening to all the lies of DHS and taking people's kids and breaking their heart. I mean, sure, there are those cases where the parents don't even want the kids. They're completely strung out on drugs. They have no intention of coming clean. But I even know of men that were in prison that they didn't terminate their parental rights. They still love their kids. They screwed up. They made mistakes. They still love their kids. So it's understandable that, sure, there are some people that choose that kids is not for them, give it to a grandma, give it to a sister, whatever. But I think that's the exception. And I've talked to numbers of ex-foster moms who told me that when they saw the files, they realized that everything DHS told them about the biological family was lies, because there's money in it. All these people lined up that making money when kids are in foster care, it's probably about $10,000 a month per child. So if you're at DHS, you prove to me that I'm wrong. The cars, the building, the transport people, the caseworkers, the managers, the supervisors, all the people downtown Salem in the temple of hell in downtown Salem, the DHS headquarters, all these people, mostly women taking other women's kids away, mostly women, okay? Mostly overweight women, really fat women, you know? It's like, why is that all the same? You know, you'd think you'd see some exceptions to that. So that's what they did to that little boy. They made him miss his appointment with destiny with the little electric train. Now, some things are maybe forgivable. I don't think of hardly anything that DHS done that's forgivable, but that's not forgivable, okay? Missing a bowl of soup is not forgivable, okay? Now, you know, time levels the playing field for everybody. You have to sleep at night. Time can take the peace away from your soul for the things you've done, for the things you did not by accident, but by meanness because it meant your paycheck. You know? So I'm probably going to do a lot more of these videos now. Yeah. I want DHS to know that we're never going to stop fighting for our kids. Never going to be forgotten what you've done. And maybe there will be changes to the law where you can all be prosecuted. And guess what? Sooner or later, you're going to get old like the rest of us. Okay? And there's no escaping what you did. And life, you get to be 70, you get to be 80, but eventually you go the way of all humans, and you can't undo what you've done. And then you may not believe in a supreme being, but you will have to answer for what you've done to these little children. Cruelty, things that were totally unnecessary, where parents are struggling to get their kids back. So I talked to one person and I said, you know, how many cases do you have? 36 cases. Mostly women this individual works with. I said, you got, of those, a few men. Of those 36 cases, you have my wife as one of your cases. She doesn't do drugs. She doesn't do alcohol. She keeps the house clean. She cooks an amazing, like, Thanksgiving dinner every time the kids show up. She's very affectionate. She gets them things they want. She teaches them about their culture. She has musical instruments from their culture in the home. She plays videos for them of their culture. She teaches them words in their language, since Aubrey Havocost took that away from them. The foster family doesn't have a problem with that. Okay? So if you're supposed to have a second language to graduate from high school in Oregon, what's the state doing taking away your first language? Sons of bitches. Okay? So, anyway, she puts on these great meals. She runs a farm, a 10-acre farm. She cans food that she sells at the market. She grows all the food. She has 5 greenhouses. She grows tons of foods and feeds families with clean food. She doesn't spray anything. There's no chemicals on the property. The reason for that was the kids could walk out and pick any vegetable they want, eat it, not think, oh, gee, we got to watch this. It's got, marathion on it, to kill this or that bug. No, nothing. And so she takes her food to market. She sells it. She's been doing that for years. And she runs a full-time life. Okay? And so I asked this person, so where do you put her on a ladder of all your people that you work with? And the person said she's head and shoulders above everybody else at the top. Why do they still have these kids separated from her after 5+ years? Okay? It's because it's bullshit. That's why. Because they're racist. They can't prove. I mean, at some point, they throw the word racist around all the time now. But at some point, you have to explain when all the evidence points otherwise. You have to explain and prove that somehow you're not just a racist and you hate this woman because she's from Southeast Asia, speaks a different language, and thinks differently than you do. Okay? So what other reason, DHS, do you have for not sending these kids home to their mom? We know all your lies in court. We know the way you twist everything and say this and that, the other thing. But in over 5 years, you have no infractions against either her or myself for going to the foster home, making contact with the kids apart from at the DHS building or the arranged visits. So anyway, I'm going to do more of these videos, and I talk to people a lot online. There's Oregon Parents Fight Back, there's Oregon DHS CPS corruption, there's Family Forward, there's all kinds of national projects about parents that completely understand that the system is rigged to take away children. Now, if you take away children and you use lies to do it like they've done in our case, then it's child trafficking. Because if you lie and you exploit children for financial gain, which is what they're doing, and they lie to get there, it's trafficking. Look it up at the UN. The definition of trafficking is to exploit through deception or, extortion where they have no choice. Okay? So anyway, if you have an interesting story, you can find me online, and I will make more of these videos. Even when I think about like a meth mom, a woman that uses fentanyl or methamphetamine, whatever, and maybe she's not a very good mother, maybe she's a lousy mother, okay? But that doesn't give you right to be cruel to her. And I see that cruelty nonstop coming out of DHS. And all their audits and all their statements that they're going to change and they're going to make things better and all this stuff, it's all bullshit because it's all about the money for the lawyers. Contract law with these lawyers is their bread and butter in Oregon. They're not going to stand up to the court. And so you go, the very well-funded people at the different consulting firms, you have all these counseling firms, you have the caseworkers, supervisors, managers, transport people, respite parents, foster parents, all the attorneys that are involved, translators. What's it cost in 5 years? We're talking millions of dollars for our case of taxpayer money. What's it cost to fly translators in from Tokyo? What's it cost to fly translators in from the East Coast, put them up, pay them an hourly wage through the company? They don't get that. They get part of it. Pay it through the company. So it's a lot of money. Look it up, do your research, and I hope blessings for my 2 little kids. I hope blessings for all the little kids and parents that are out there that have had their children taken away. There's some of them that I know for years, and it's very sad to see. It's very tragic. It's not helping our society, but I grew up in the 60s, and I can tell you that America is completely corrupt now as a country. The government is completely corrupt. They're spending billions in Ukraine to have every single man killed in a war, to turn mothers into widows, take away their sons, their husbands, and they don't care. And they can't fix the things in this country. There's about 400,000 children in foster care. It's a revolving door. So things are not good in this country. And if you're in the church and you think being a foster mom's an honorable thing, well, you're going to be dancing with the devil, because you're going to be working with DHS. And they are not accountable to anybody. They're not accountable to the court. They're not accountable to anybody. They are a human child trafficking enterprise. Okay. See you next time.